morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where first off today, before we get started, I want to take just a moment to talk about YouTube Red. Yes, that mysterious new subscription service that YouTube announced earlier this week and which sent everybody into quite the tizzy. But bottom line is that you have a decision coming up. Do you want to continue to watch YouTube just the way that you are, or you want to pay to subscribe to YouTube? And YouTube is working very hard to create a number of incentives to make you choose option 2. And I have an incentive actually to add to the pile. And this was quite the surprise in that I hadn't expected YouTube to solve a problem for you and me. And what's that problem? Well, there are a couple Morning Movie News viewers who are actually Morning Movie News listeners. You don't sit down and watch the show, you listen to it while you do other things, be it exercise, errands, cleaning up around the house, studying. And so because of that, you've asked me if I would be able to create a podcast version of this show, so it wouldn't take up so much of your roaming data, your service on your phone. And I felt very bad that I haven't been able to provide that because I can't monetize a podcast on iTunes, basically. That's the situation. And so it would just be really detrimental to me from a financial standpoint. And so I have felt really bad about that, though, and I've always been on the lookout for a way to fix that. And lo and behold, YouTube Red seems to be that answer. Because as you might have noticed, some of the incentives that they've already announced are that you can listen to YouTube videos while you use other apps on your phone. You don't have to stay primarily in the app. Or you can watch videos offline, which basically means you can download them and then not use up your data. So I just wanted to point that out for those of you who are on the fence as to whether or not you want to subscribe, or perhaps maybe you didn't even consider subscribing, but now that you know that this is something you'll be able to do and it can fix a problem you have with Morning Movie News, maybe you do want to consider subscribing. So I just wanted to point that out. And isn't that just a happy turn of events that, I was just talking to someone the other day about this in the comment section being like, oh man, I wish I had a solution to this. And here we go. Well, hopefully here we go. Let's see how YouTube Red turns out. But anyway, on the surface of it, it does seem to fix a problem for some of you. All right, so let's get on to today's stories. We have 3 very interesting ones and then a viewer question. And the first one is we're going to circle back to that damn Gambit movie, which still doesn't have a director. Doug Liman was the most recent name that was mentioned. Very mainstream choice, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, Edge of Tomorrow. And I thought he was a pretty good choice until I heard that the new people they're approaching, and I was like, those are much better choices. So who's been added to the short list, I guess you could say. But they've pushed the shoot date back a little bit now, but they still are trying to make that, I believe, October 2016 release. It's going to be tight. It's going to be tough, but it's going to be really embarrassing if they don't make it. Although I think if they were to sign one of these two directors, I'd get over it. So let's discuss. So the first one is Joe Cornish, which of course is Edgar Wright's disciple, and he co-wrote Ant-Man with him before they both decided to walk off of the project. And he of course directed Attack the Block, which discovered John Boyega, who of course now is Finn in the new Star Wars movie. So Joe Cornish, very nice, small, understated track record, but he certainly has his fans. But I really like the tone. I think he's a really outside-of-the-box thinker creatively, and I think that he would be a very interesting match not only with the character of Gambit, but also with Channing Tatum, who is very good at comedy. So when I heard that Joe Cornish was being considered, I was like, much better than Doug Liman, much better than Rupert Wyatt. This might be a blessing in disguise, this whole, behind-the-scenes drama for Gambit. And then the other person they're thinking of going after is Shane Black. Now, a lot of you might be like, oh man, I didn't like Iron Man 3. Don't hire Shane Black for anything. But don't forget that Shane Black did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which was actually a huge movie for Robert Downey Jr., and then it helped get his career back on track and put him in a position where he could go out for Iron Man, right? And it wasn't absolutely absurd. I mean, it was pretty ridiculous as is, but Kiss Kiss Bang 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 helped make it a little more feasible. But anyway, Shane Black, because I think of that background, would also be a very good fit with Gambit. And you have 2 directors here who are also writers, so I think if either one joined on, I wouldn't be surprised if they tweaked the script a little bit as well. But both of them are very strong creative choices, and I think are both are great choices for a daring rogue thief, right, who happens to have mutant powers. So I think that Gambit might turn out better than ever if it's able to land either of these 2. And I'd be happy with either one. But I think, again, much better choices than Rupert Wyatt or Doug Liman, so I hope it does go to Cornish or Black. And, Channing Tatum tried to get Steven Soderbergh to do it, and he said no, but this would be another out-of-the-box choice, and I think also underscores what a good producer Channing Tatum is. Very, very talented in that area as well. All right, so that's the first story of the day, and I'd be very curious to hear what you think of that. Now, the second story of the day has to do with the Power Rangers movie. And I actually got a tweet from someone yesterday, a BTT viewer, saying, "Oh, Grace, you can talk about the fact that they cast the Black Ranger and they cast an Asian actor," which of course is very unusual for a Hollywood blockbuster. But wait till you hear who they cast, and it makes total sense with Hollywood today. But anyway, I'm just very curious. I see a couple of movie news websites trying to really push the Power Rangers. Like, ooh, the Power Rangers are coming. Are you excited about the Power Rangers? But I have to say, I don't really see a huge excitement for the Power Rangers. It might end up being something along the lines of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which did very nicely, but I don't think this is going to be some huge property. I don't think it's going to be like something that ever is anywhere near the $1 billion club, for instance. And maybe it never is intended to be, but I think some of the way that the reporting is being shaped, it does seem like it's supposed to be some big fan event, where I'm not really feeling that. So I'm curious, do you care about the Power Rangers movie? And do you understand, I mean, are you starting to buy into the hype that's trying to be built, or are you like, nice try? But anyway, they cast Ludi Lin as the Black Ranger, and they've already cast the Pink and the Red Ranger as well. And the casting announcements are like these really cheesy like headshots put together with like a Power Rangers kind of logo, and they're like, Ludi Lin is the Black Ranger. And it just looks really TV-like, I feel, very CW. Although I think today the CW has improved immensely from its original starting point. So it looks a little almost like Disney Channel or like Nick Jr. Well, not Nick Jr. Nickelodeon itself is Junior. So, but that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from it. But Ludi Lin is an interesting choice because he was on Netflix's Marco Polo, but the real reason he was cast is that he was in China's Monster Hunt, and that is like one of the most successful movies of all time in China. It's absolutely huge. It's a huge hit. It'll be coming here next year with a very limited release. It looks super weird. I don't think it's going to make the transition culturally from China to the United States. But Ludi Lin, safe to say, is a big draw, a big name in China. So I'm sure that when the Power Rangers movie eventually hits China, Ludi Lin's involvement will help ensure that it does get a release in China, because not every movie does, as we've discussed. They're very limited in who can get in. And also then they'll be able to use that in the ad campaign in China. And of course, Power Rangers seems like something that's right up, the Chinese market's alley, because of course they originate from there, from Asia. So very interesting, very savvy business decision on the Power Ranger producing team's behalf. But the rest of the cast and the director are such odd choices, such Disney Channel, such Nickelodeon choices, that I really don't understand what the game plan here is. Someone named Naomi Scott is the Pink Ranger. She was on Terra Nova on Fox, which was actually a pretty good show, but I don't remember her from it. And Dacre Montgomery. When I looked at my notes, I was like, I must have had a typo with Dacre. I must have miswritten that. And then I went into IMDb to double check, and I was like, nope, I wrote that correctly. And he's really has no credits to his name. Very new talent. But again, he doesn't look, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm not being fair to Dacre, but when I look at these headshots and I look at how the cast is coming together, I'm not like, oh, wow, this looks so amazing. I feel this looks like, a glorified, TV movie. And they do superhero shows on both Nickelodeon and the Disney Channel, so that, closes the gap even more. And then directing is Dean Israelite, who directed Project Almanac, originally Project X, the whole time travel movie. That was okay. It was all right. But again, it was a little bit Disney Channel-y, a little bit Nickelodeon. So I'm really surprised, considering how this film is coming together, that, maybe in retrospect, they were wrong not to hire Joseph Kahn to direct this. He made that really dark, more adult Power Ranger short that got a lot of people's attention. And of course, he's really popular now because he and Taylor Swift are on a hot streak with her music videos. So considering the way this project is coming together and then when you contrast it with the Power Rangers fan film, again, one really has to wonder if maybe that they made a mistake, and maybe they were so concerned about having an outside force, influence their property, that they didn't stop to think that maybe he was doing a good job. So I'm curious again, what do you think of Power Rangers? How do you like the way it's coming together? Are you a fan? Are you not a fan? Were you a fan and you're not a fan anymore? I'm just trying to get a bead on this movie and where it sits with actual moviegoers. All right, now for the third story of the day, I was trying to find something to cover, and I was going through the Hollywood Reporter, and I saw a release. Well, it was an article, but it was clearly, coordinated with Millar World, Mark Millar's comic book company, about a new comic that Mark Millar was publishing. And they said, from Kingsman writer Mark Millar publishes a new comic. And so they had some artwork from it, as you can see here. And Stuart Immonen is going to be the artist on it. And he's like one of my favorite artists. So I'm definitely going to be reading it. I actually read everything Mark Millar does. I think he does a very nice job. But I'm becoming increasingly upset that Mark Millar pretty much only writes movie pitches. And they're so obviously movie pitches that I'm kind of starting to feel used as a reader, right? I'm like, why am I reading this? This should just going to development executives. Because they really only, there are a couple exceptions, like the Jupiter's Legacy title has gone on a little bit longer. Although now they've gone to the parents when I was just getting interested in the kids' story. But anyway, largely the Millar World titles stick to 6 issues, and then Mark Millar shops them around to try and get someone to make a movie out of them. And so far, he's doing really well, because not only were Wanted and Kick-Ass successful, but with Kingsman, he finally had a mainstream success. So he is obviously, and I think deservedly, very much in demand. So he has this new pitch that's coming out called Empress, and it's basically Married to the Mob, that old Michelle Pfeiffer movie, but with aliens, right? So this woman is an empress, and she's married to a dictator and like this alien community, and she decides, after having been married to him for a while, that, you know what, she doesn't like being married to a dictator. It's not the life she wanted, and so she goes on the run back to her home planet with her kids, and her dictator husband is like going after her, right? Because exactly, it's the Married to the Mob storyline, and I'm sure that's the elevator pitch. Married to the Mob meets like Men in Black or something like that, right? And that's actually a pretty darn good pitch. But anyway, and then the other twist is that this is actually Earth a long time ago. You know that theory that people have that like Star Wars takes place on Earth like just really long time ago, or they fly off and they end up going to Earth from the planets that you see. But anyway, I've never liked that theory with Star Wars, and I don't like the theory here. I'm like, can't it just be an alien race somewhere else? And also, like, then you're gonna have to explain where everybody went, and I don't know. And then you're also gonna make some people believe that evolution isn't real, etc., etc. So anyway, it sounds like a good idea to me. It sounds like a good comic. It sounds like a good movie. But I just wish that Mark Millar would write these as genuine comics that were ongoing as long as people were buying them, instead of just kind of using me as a selling point that I purchased the comic, showing sales numbers to Hollywood executives to get these things picked up. And he has a great little thing going here with getting the best artists in the biz, and maybe because there are only 6 issues, he can get such great artists because it isn't as big a commitment. But I liked Starlight. I've enjoyed almost everything that he's done. I liked the Chrononauts that recently came out. Great stuff. And I think Chrononauts is actually coming back, but still very frustrating. I'm just curious to how you guys feel. But anyway, I wanted to bring this up because it does sound like a good pitch. And also, if you want to get in on a movie on the ground floor, go pick up Empress, because I'm sure it will be a movie soon, or at least be in development to be one. Now, on to the viewer question today. This comes from Dan Link 326. And Dan says, at Grace Randolph, question: can you explain the U.S. film rating system? Please hope you answer. Daniel from the UK, **, heart, heart. I like that. Thanks for switching it up, Daniel. So Daniel wants to know our rating system. And I think that's great. And also, I would like to say to those of you who live outside the United States, please return the favor. Please let us know down below the different ratings where you are and what they mean. So I'm going to go through the U.S. ratings for Dan and all of you who are curious. So it starts out with a G rating, which is for general audiences. And this means that anyone can go and see the movie. It's okay for everybody. And almost no movie is rated G. It's almost become that if your movie is rated G, it must be lame, right? It's like a baby's movie. It's for babies, babies only. So nobody wants their movie rated G. Then there's PG, which is parental guidance, meaning, maybe this isn't appropriate for your kid. You might want to take a look at it or do a little bit of research into the movie before you take them. Then there's, and that's like the new G, right? Like if you're not a PG-13 movie, you want to be PG. Then PG-13, this is the sweet spot. This is what every movie wants to be rated, because you're still cool enough to not be for babies, but you're not so cool that you're too cool for the room, right? Or too cool for the theater, the multiplex, and you really cut your audience down, because after PG-13, it starts to limit who can go into the theater. So with PG-13, they're basically saying if your kid's under 13, you should be concerned, but 13 and up, no problem. They should be able to see this movie just fine. And because of this rating, anyone can go into a movie by themselves. anybody still. A group of teenagers can go see a PG-13 movie and not have to have an adult with them, right? I don't think you'd see a bunch of 5-year-olds going to the movies by themselves, but theoretically they too could go, I think, to a PG-13 movie. I don't think there's anything restrictive about it. So that would be hilarious. I would love to see that. But anyway, basically, if you're young enough to not be able to walk around by yourself, that person should decide if you should see the PG-13 movie. I guess that really is kind of the divide, right? Like if you're a teenager and you're hanging out by yourself, you can go see this movie without anybody having to say it's okay. But then we get into an R rating. And what an R rating means is that this really isn't for kids, but if it's your call, you're the parent, you're the guardian, but you have to vouch for them by going with them to the movie, or at least buying them the ticket, right? So an adult or a guardian must buy a ticket for anyone under 17 to see an R-rated movie. So that really restricts who can go. Now, people have gotten around this in the United States by buying a ticket for another movie and then just taking advantage of the poor security, unfortunately, which actually is no joke considering all the horrible things that have happened in theaters recently with people's safety. So I don't want to laugh about that at all. But movie theaters have cramped security. So people sneak in and they can because, again, they bought a ticket to another movie. And they give their money to another movie, and it's counted in that movie's box office revenue. So it doesn't help the R-rated movie at all. So that's why something like Crimson Peak, that's why Universal wanted to be rated PG-13, because it would have greatly expanded who could go and see the movie. Now there's another rating called NC-17, which is incredibly rare. It's like a unicorn that nobody wants to see. Because if your movie is rated NC-17, your audience is really restricted, and it's really going to hurt your box office. Like, you better be like a major awards contender if you're rated NC-17, because that's the only, because also, then there's a little bit of a stigma about it here in the United States as well, right? Like, so much stuff can go into an R rating, like what's happening in your movie. So NC-17 means that even if you're under 17 and someone's willing to vouch for you and buy your ticket, doesn't matter. The U.S., well, not the U.S. government, the MPAA, the ratings board in Hollywood, which was enforced, I guess, by the U.S. government, says you can't go and see it. Sorry. So those are the ratings here in the United States. So I hope that was helpful, Dan, not only to hear what the ratings are, but how the industry views them. So again, please share your own ratings in your country down below, as well as what you think of today's top 3 stories and that viewer question, and also your thoughts on YouTube Red. Are you thinking of subscribing or not? I look forward to hearing your thoughts on all those topics, and you can check out some other episodes right now.